Oh, hello, everybody. That's weird. It says live for 40 seconds, and I just clicked the button. I'm trying out something new here. I have my OBS studio running. Just going to turn that volume down a little bit, maybe minus 4 dB. Let me know how the audio sounds. I guess I can also check on here. Why don't we do this? Sorry. So this will... For the first couple of minutes here, this will just be kind of a test for myself. And then I promise we'll talk about something. So let me just go to my channel and go to here. Testing. How can you hear me? And go to here. Testing. How can you hear me? Testing. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So I think that is working kind of, like I said, as I'm going, let me know. Let's maybe turn that down another little bit there. I realize I'm a loud talker, and I hope I don't deafen you all when you're watching these videos. I don't know the level of my own voice sometimes. So I'm trying out this OBS. I've got this OBS studio, and I've kind of messed around with it, and I have it going through StreamYard. I'm also trying another browser instead of my Google Chrome. I don't know, just trying out some things to see if I can get a little bit better, just because some of the stuff we've been doing for our live chats, it's been kind of choppy at best of times here. Yeah, so I tried shooting a video during the week, and I got kind of sidetracked with talking about other stuff, and that just sent me into a bit of a mental spin there. So I deleted that video. I deleted that video. I'm just going to kind of monitor as we're going in case I cut out or something. I deleted that video just because I was so kind of off kilter, and there wasn't much going on there, and I just wasn't focusing. I'm back. I'm focusing. Let's do it. So the first thing, I wanted to talk about a few things today. I think we'll start off talking about some music, and then we'll talk about a couple of movies, a documentary that I watched last night with my wife, that I've seen a million times before, but she's never seen. I haven't seen it in a long time, and I really wanted to sit and give it another watch after all these years, and it was just as good as I remembered. But we'll start with this. So here we go. Every Tuesday night, I have a little radio show. Look at that freaking banner. So I've got a radio show on UMFM, which is the University of Manitoba radio station, 101.5, and that's from 11 p.m. till midnight Central Standard Time. On the last show, I played I played this entire soundtrack, the Basket Case soundtrack. So it's from kind of a classic horror movie that I've been a fan of forever since I saw it. For those of you that are watching, there's probably a couple of you who caught that live stream, so this will be very repetitive. It was kind of during the era of me going and visiting video rental places, Video Stop being one of the ones in town, just kind of hungry for horror movies, and I would rent anything that I could get my hands on horror movie wise. Basket Case was one of those movies that I just gravitated towards, and it introduced me to an incredible film that I don't know how many times I watched it, but it also introduced me to a whole world of really low budget filmmaking that I grew to love. I love movies. Movies have been a staple, and movies and music, I think, have been a staple in my life through my entire life. It was movies like this that got me interested in working in film to begin with. I was later on, when the sequels were coming out, I was collecting Gore Zone magazine, and I think we've talked about it here on this channel too. And there was an issue that focused on, I think it was Basket Case 3, the third movie, because the special effects in that were pretty, the special makeup effects were pretty incredible. So at first I wanted to get into the world of special effects makeup. It didn't turn out to happen that way. I got into film in another way, and now am where I am within the union office. But films like this just kind of really led me on a path of just, again, this idea that's come to me through my entire life when it comes to any sort of entertainment or any sort of collectibles or comics or music. The idea of the dig and digging for the obscure things and really going off the beaten path to really dig in the underbellies of stuff. You know, movies like this really reinforced that. Music that came out of this kind of thing really reinforced that. And it's funny, when I was I've listened to this soundtrack, I don't know how many times at this point, probably 4 or 5 times probably. Listening to the soundtrack again really puts a lot of things in perspective for me as far as music that I'm into these days. Or not even these days, music that I kind of started to gravitate to later in my life. There's a real good mix of really experimental and soundscapey, noisy type elements in it. There's some real loungy kind of jazzier moments in it. There's some purely synth driven stuff in here, kind of like, you know, it just has it covers a lot of genres. So it's sort of hearing stuff like this again brings into perspective why I like the things that I do. And I guess maybe that happens later in life when you sort of rediscover these moments in your youth that really had an impact. So that would be one. Highly recommended. The company is Terror Vision, and they do a lot of soundtracks. They do a lot of vinyl releases. They also do a bunch of cassettes. I think they do t-shirts. I think they've done pins, enamel pins and that stuff. So well worth checking out. There's already a few other tapes on there that I would love to get. The one thing is, when you get the cassette, you don't get a download code, which is unusual. I still buy a few tapes here and there from artists on Bandcamp, and generally you get some sort of download code, or if you're buying it from Bandcamp, obviously you get the digital right away. So I was a little surprised. I did find it online so I could play it on the radio show. So if you're curious, and if you want to check out the streaming, you can on umfm.com. You can catch it live. There's not much in the way of archives right now. For the past year, we've been recording from home. When we're in the studio, they do archive the radio shows for, I believe, a month or 2 months. So you can listen back to previous episodes. If anybody absolutely can't catch it, please feel free to get in touch with me on Twitter, or send me a message here. I can always send you a link to an episode. I can always send you an episode so you can check it out if you're really curious. Every single show, I play different styles of music. I never really know what it's going to be, but like this channel, it's all over the place. But generally digging into more obscure stuff or stranger things or whatever it is, right? But not exclusively. So there's Dead Air. The next thing I want to talk about was a Canadian filmmaker. We'll come back to this. Peter Mettler is a Canadian documentary filmmaker who I've liked for quite a long time. I haven't seen everything that he's done. I recently picked up a couple of things directly from his company, which is Grimthorpe Films, and they're based out of Toronto, Ontario. CBC TV, CBC Radio here in Canada, PBS, that sort of thing. Growing up watching that stuff when we had 13 channels on the dial, you'd probably get 9. One of them was a French channel. One of them was the Weather Channel. Late at night, if you went to the French channel, it didn't come in very well, but you could get, I had this little black and white TV when I was a kid. You could get, if you were lucky, you could get a movie where they showed naked ladies. So you could see that through the hazy lines and the snow on the TV. But there was a few things that repeated and played over and over again on CBC and PBS. Comic Book Confidential is a really good one for that. That one played a lot. I saw that a lot growing up, and now have fortunately bought the tape. I used to have this on VHS tape. Lord knows what happens to it. Unfortunately, I missed getting the Blu-ray copy. It's sold out, but I got the the DVD copy of Picture of Light. This is an incredible, incredible documentary for a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, I love winter. I was born and raised in Winnipeg. I moved to Ontario for about 5 years. I came back to Winnipeg. I love Winnipeg. This takes place in Churchill, Manitoba, which is far north of us here in the province of Manitoba. You can only get there by train. There have been a couple of movies that have shot up there. Unfortunately, when those have happened, I've always been on another project, so I haven't had an opportunity to go up there. I've always wanted to visit Churchill. So the other thing that this holds dear to me is I watched this so many times, and I remember starting working in film in Winnipeg and meeting a sound guy, Leon Johnson is his name, and instantly recognizing him. And eventually, when I got more comfortable with the work and got more comfortable with people and new people, I asked him, I said, I recognize you from Picture of Light. And, there's a small portion here in the beginning where they're on a train and he's leaning out the train with a boom microphone, recording the sound of the train as they're going up to Churchill. They went up to Churchill a couple of times with the purpose of recording the Northern Lights and talking to the people that lived in Churchill. Churchill is a hell of a community. When the film productions have gone there, there's always been this kind of talk with people of being careful when you go to Churchill. Not only because of the extreme cold, when you're out on the tundra, you have people that come with you that are armed, and their sole purpose is to watch out for polar bears. And if they tell you to move, you move. If they tell you to do something, you do something. You really have to stick close together. If you're out in the tundra a little further, especially if there's a storm. Now, again, when we're going there to shoot a movie, they're not bringing us into any of these really extreme scenarios. So this isn't something that's a direct kind of challenge when we go up there to shoot. But in this, there's one character that they meet, one guy here that they meet who was lost in the tundra for 6 days and survived out there. Unsure how. And when they talk to him, he's on his way to the hospital. He got 4th degree frostbite, and his foot, I don't know if they had to amputate his foot eventually or if they just had to cut off his toes. But you can see when you're talking to him, this kind of transfixed look on his face that he's just been transfixed by the North. And honestly, like, the North and stuff has that kind of effect on me when I watch this stuff. When we watched this the other night, I felt the most relaxed that I felt in a long time. There's something about that environment. There's something about those extreme elements that really just kind of calls to me. The music is by Jim O'Rourke, and I want to say they don't have the guitarist. Blanking on his name now. Anyway, Jim O'Rourke is responsible for the music, and he has a guitarist that plays with him. And it's very kind of ambient. So Jim O'Rourke eventually played with Sonic Youth for a little bit of time, but he was always a musician in his own right too. I don't know how many soundtracks he did, but the sound in this, like the atmospheric kind of ambient music that's in this, beautiful. I strongly recommend if you can find a copy of this. I don't know if it's up on YouTube. I don't know if it's up on any sort of online area where you might find movies and TV. Have a look for it, really give it a shot. And if you want to support the company themselves, see if it'll focus there. No, it's not really going to focus, but it's Grimthorpe. So GRIMTHORPE Film Incorporated. And again, they're based out of Toronto, Ontario. Peter Mettler also has a website, Peter Mettler, which is METTLER.com. So that was beautiful. When I lived in Ontario, so I think this was 1993 or 1992, the DVD came out, or the movie came out officially in 94. I think it was filmed in 1993, though. when I lived in Ontario, we lived there from around, I don't know, I would say 1998 to 1999 to probably around 2003-ish. He put out in 2002 this movie Gambling Gods and LSD, and it's a 3-hour, I believe it's 3 hours, and it's incredible. I've only seen this one once. I haven't watched it a second time, but when we lived in Ontario, I went to one of the local art house theaters in Kitchener-Waterloo. If Clark Kent Jeans is watching, he probably knows the one. It's across the road from a bar called the Jane Bond, which I think is still there. And it had a music store, the Orange Monkey, upstairs. And I'm forgetting, it was right down near Waterloo, the Waterloo Brewery. And I'm completely blanking on the name of the theater. I want to say like King's Theater, but I don't think that that's right. Anyway, I went and saw it there. My wife at the time didn't want to sit in a theater for 3 hours, so I went, and again was just completely put under Metler's spell. He has a way of creating a film and creating these moments, and with he does narration in both of these. The way that he talks and the things that he talks about, again, just really suck me into his world. I'm there, you know, and the atmosphere that he creates with the imagery and the sounds and the music. Beautiful. So it's Peter Metler's Inquiry into Transcendence is a 3-hour epic journey across countries and cultures, interconnecting people, places, and histories. Everywhere along the way, the same themes are found: thrill-seeking, luck, destiny, belief, expanding perception, and the craving for security in an uncertain world. Fact joins fantasy as the search for meaning and the search for ecstasy begin to merge. Gambling Gods and LSD might change the way you will look at the world. So there you go. So this is just the Blu-ray copy. Take those out of there. Oh, it's in the player upstairs. And then sent along some postcards as well too. So one for Gambling Gods and LSD. This one for something called Becoming Animal, which is a film by Emma Davey and Peter Metler, which I don't know. And then The End of Time, one that I haven't seen, another Peter Metler one. So I haven't seen that one either. So it's great to see that they're still around. It's great to see that you don't have to go to the kind of secondhand market or any other places. You can buy the movies directly from them. Really nice people. They are also on Twitter. So follow them on Twitter if you're curious, and definitely check out the website. So 2 highly recommended movies there for you. Continuing with stuff that came, the kayfabe guys have been threatening to do a video on, and they're out of reach. Those ones are out of reach. This series, Blab. So hearing that from them, I did a little bit of digging online to see if I could find any of the issues. My hope was that I could find a lot of some of the earlier issues. And I was surprised at kind of how difficult it was to find them and kind of the price of some of them. So I do know that the kayfabe effect is real. So I do know that if they ever do drop that video, I'm going to have a harder time finding it. So I found a beautiful copy of issue number 1. And that came today. 80 pages. This is the second printing. Yeah, so this is the reprint edition, which came out in spring of 1993. The original ones came out in the mid 80s, I believe. Even my comic shop didn't have a photo of the original, the first printing of this, so I don't even know what that cover looks like. But maybe I said it already. Kitchen Sink puts it out, and unfortunately, I should have a look. I think Kitchen Sink still maybe has a website. I don't know. I hope that when you go to Last Gasp, you can still find all of the underground comics that Last Gasp has put out right directly from them. Again, instead of having to go to this secondary market or the secondhand market and paying inflated prices to someone that's not associated with the publication of this stuff. I really wish that there was more opportunity, and I know it's not realistic. I get it. to sell one book a year to a guy like me sitting in his basement. I understand that it's not realistic, but it does kind of pain me to buy some of this stuff from someone else sometimes. This wasn't cheap, but it was the best deal that I found. And I looked again today just to see what else had popped up on eBay since I last looked. There's still not a lot of these issues out there. So I would say that if you do see them in a comic shop, if you do see them in a cheap bin, even if they're beat to hell, snatch them up. The 3 issues that I have, the other 2 that I have, I've had forever. And I've read them millions of times before. When I was doing the Jim Thompson videos, we had to look through one of the issues because it was Underground Cartoonist talking about Robert Crumb. So what I didn't realize, this first volume is all text throughout the whole thing. I wasn't sure. I didn't know that that was the case. It's not disappointing to me whatsoever, especially because this issue, they talk about EC Comics. And so for the first few pages you get, I just started reading it tonight. First few pages, you get a very, very basic introduction to EC and the Gaines family and the beginning of comics, you know, and the reasons for, hey, gee, how's it going, man? And the reasons why they tried to throwing a 10-cent sticker and seeing who would buy these things. But then the rest of the book is notes from the underground, and it's a boatload of underground comic artists talking about EC Comics and the influence that it had on them. So Bill Griffith, Charles Dallas, who I've talked about before, whose art is really growing on me, Justin Green, George Metzger, Rick Griffin, Tom Veitch, Jay Lynch, Gilbert Shelton, Fulbert Sturgeon. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. So it's a ton of underground guys just talking about what EC Comics meant to them, which again, I've spoken about it before when we've looked at things like Slow Death and some of the anthologies of Skull and stuff, that it's clear to me, Howard Cruz here, it's clear to me that the EC guys, it's always been clear that the EC guys have had a big influence on the undergrounds in general. So Richard Corbin there as well too. So I'm digging into this book tonight. This will be something that I read tonight. And now I'm jonesing for more of them. Ryan 4-Color Apocalypse, I think is his handle on Twitter. He was raving about this, and another one called Buzzard. So I'm going to keep my eyes out for Buzzard as well too. I put out the word probably about a month ago to the local comic addicts to see if anybody had copies. So far, no luck, but I'm hoping that some of these guys that buy a lot of collections, I'm hoping that they stumble on them. Yeah, I mean, Skip Williamson, like, dude, the list is unbelievable of underground comic artists talking about their absolute love for everything EC. Very excited about that. And like I said, as ETA Nick would say, razor sharp corners, razor sharp, in beautiful, beautiful condition. The guy who I bought it from took really good care in packing it up to me as well, which is great. So it came unscathed. Even has the gloss. Look, check out that gloss. Let me get the light. Where's the light? Oh, it's just not working for me. There we go. Oh, check out the gloss, buddy. Anyway, so I'm excited about that. Needless to say, I'm excited about that. A couple of things to talk about. I sold a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays, kind of cleaning up, you know, going through the yearly cleanse of stuff, just to get rid of a bunch of things. And instead of trading them in, I sold them. He gave me a really, really good price for trade, so I couldn't say no. And I went to poke around one of the, well, not one of the, it's the only bookstore in town that is local. It's called McNally Robinson, and it's Winnipeg owned and operated. They used to have 2 stores here in town, and I think they still have one in Regina or Saskatoon, I think, in Saskatchewan, the next province over, to our west. They only have the 1 store in town now, but I've been a big supporter of McNally, again, because it's local. They're all amazing people there. And they actually, one of the things that they had, I didn't realize existed. It was a collection of Minara works, and this one is in it. So I got this in the mail. Thanks to guys like G, thanks to guys like Paulo, thanks to guys like Earl Grey. You know, I always take notes. So I have running lists and I have wish lists on Book Depository. So this one came from Book Depository. I had pre-ordered the Druyer Elric, which apparently is on its way to me now. With Book Depository, whatever they have in stock, they send it to you. You're not paying any shipping. I was hoping that they would kind of come at the same time, but whatever, it's fine. So I love this. This was a fantastic story. Minara's art. I know his art. I can't say that I've seen a boatload of it. I've seen images out there, just like everybody's seen. Here you go. There. Let's just open it to that page, shall we? This was a great story about a guy who gets turned into a donkey and goes on an adventure, basically to try to get turned back into a human, and things that he experiences along the way, based on an incredibly ancient and old text. And then when I was doing a tiny bit of research about it, very, very tiny bit, even kind of ties to Pinocchio, for example. Your favorite, Heiji? Yeah, well, I'm glad that I started with this one then, because this is great. I wish I could remember the titles that they also included in that collection, but it looked like there was about 5 different stories in it. The downside was, though, that collected edition was smaller than this. And as I've said a million times, and I'll continue to say on this channel till my end of my days, this is the format for me. This bigger hardcover. It's not super beefy. This album format, I am so in love with that I can't even tell you. I think for me personally, this is the way that I would love to read all of my comics. I would love it if things were this size. I think it's great. You know, so it's a raunchy story. It's a ridiculous story. And it's a beautifully illustrated story. Really, really impressed with this. Beautiful stuff. So that got me in the mood to kind of read some more. And I went to the shelves and I reread one of my older as in it's been with me a little longer. Luc and Francois Scoyton's Zara. So book 2 in a trilogy. Oh, look at that. Ryan C. I was just talking about you earlier when I was talking about Blab and I mentioned Buzzard. This is book 2 in a trilogy. I want to say that books 1 and 2 were kind of a year or 2 apart. And then I think book 3 came out around 10 years after this one. Let's see. I don't remember the names because that's just me. So the Hollow Grounds is the whole series. Carpachis is the first one. Zara is the second one. And Nogagon, which is a palindrome. So it's spelled the same forwards and backwards. Nogegon. It's yeah, you missed your own shout out, but there you go. We did a little rewind on the shout out and shouted you out one more time. So the first 2 books are early on in Scoyton's career as an artist. And some of the stuff I was reading online, people are saying, you know, you can see him kind of finding his feet. And it's like, motherfucker, if this is a guy finding his feet, it's impressive. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. So it's kind of broken up into 2 separate stories. I want to say Doris is her name, but I don't know if that's right now. Olive. Nope, it wasn't right. So the first one, kind of first part of the story, it's from Olive's personal diary. And it's about her and her people that just continually walk the land. As soon as they wake up in the morning, they just start walking. And the kind of leader is always looking at a little boat that he puts in the water. I think it's a little paper boat that he always puts in the water, trying to keep pace with it. She finally gets sick, and like a lot of the youth are doing, they're questioning why they're walking and what are we running away from and what's going to come up behind us. So she decides to stay behind. She doesn't tell anybody, and she stays behind. She wakes up one morning and is pretty sure that the ground is starting to tilt away from her. So she sets up this bag, ties it to a tree, and then does a little experiment, and then draws out kind of what's happening with the land. So what she finally figures out is that the earth is rolling up behind them, that they're basically on this planet that is continually in motion, and they have to keep walking to stay at the lower level. So she kind of writes this diary, and eventually we see her. She finally gets to a point where she's hanging from a tree and dangling from the top of the tree, and kind of falls. And that leads us into some more gorgeous, gorgeous art. And then the second half of the story, or the second, actually, it's more than half. It's probably 2/3 of the story. We then get introduced to a group of women who live in in this ground where one side of the ground is always moving. It's this vertical existence that they have, and how they deal with that, and how they survive, how they kind of continue their lineage. They have this slug type creature that when a woman is ready, she goes through this ritual and then gets impregnated basically by like a beam of light after kissing this slug creature. We get introduced to a planet of men who discover Zara, the planet Zara, and want to go there and conquer and, do things that horrible, awful men want to do, rape and pillage and the like. And then it just goes from there. So Olive, from the first part of our story, gets reintroduced into this one. And it's a fantastic story. I really enjoyed it. It's no secret that Scoia'tain is one of my favorites. I have another book of his, Samaris, and then I've got a bunch of, I think maybe all of his stuff from Cheval Noir, that I want to read again, because the stuff from Cheval Noir was some of my favorite. But I think that there's the other 2 volumes of this might be at my favorite place in town, Red River Books. I remember seeing the first volume there before, and I didn't pick it up because the art just didn't appeal to me. But now that I know that the reason that art in the first one maybe didn't appeal to me is because that was really early in his career and still kind of getting a handle on what his style was, etc. I do want to give it a chance. And apparently book 3, from what I read, the little bit that I read, there was a guy reviewing all the books, and he loved book 3, said that it worked really well. And I don't want to talk about it beyond that for sake of maybe letting some spoilers spill. But beautiful, and again, exactly the same size, that European album format. Did that work? Yes, it did. So the Eurocomics album format is the best. Portable, easy on the eyes, and gorgeous art reproduction size. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it really does. Like, it really kind of shows his versatility as an artist. And I would say that the second half kind of becomes it's more in tune with what his art becomes, and really nice use of color. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful artist. He's a hell of a creator. I think there's videos out there on YouTube of him doing some drawing as well. So those 2 were great reads. I don't think that there was anything new that I already hadn't talked about in, actually there was a couple of things over here. Continuing in my, I don't want to talk about those. I'll talk about this last one, and then we'll probably stop it there. Leave some other stuff for when we chat with Rasa on the weekend, or when I chat with Rasa on the weekend, I'm hoping. Kind of, again, going through my bins, going through some of the independent stuff, going through Fantagraphics, all of this. Found this in there, and it's something that, again, I've had forever and haven't read for a long time, and I figured now was a great time to revisit it. This is Sake Jock, comics from today's Japanese underground, and today in this is 1995. Man, was this was a fun read. There was a couple of stories that didn't do anything for me, but there were some stories that were incredible. This first one was real fun. Really a real Ted McKeever kind of look to all that machinery there, mixed with these very simple drawings of a cat who's basically in the machine shop. A guy is getting sick, and this cat is sent away to get some homeopathic medicine. And the cat gets sidetracked with pigs' heads and goats' heads and stuff in the market, and ends up going home to have dinner. And then the last panel, we cut to the guy in the shop, and he's now dead in a pile of his own vomit. And then this What a Mixed Up World was a hell of a good a ridiculous read. And again, I think especially, well, maybe not, I shouldn't say especially at this time. I think that around this time, a lot of they even talk about it here a bit in the intro, that, you know, there's been a lot of manga at this time that was introduced to a North American audience, but not much in the form of kind of underground manga. And the magazine was called Garo. The kayfabe guys have talked about it in the past too. And the creator, so for this What a Mixed Up World, Yasuji Tanioka was one of the most popular cartoonists of the 70s and 80s, inventing several popular catchphrases still in use today. Now in its 27th year, the Tanioka Yasuji Award is considered a gateway to a successful cartoonist's career. And it's completely ridiculous. The two stories in here consist of a female character with her ass up in the air, basically, and the things that happen to this woman, and the classic kind of nosebleed to kind of symbolize sexual arousal. And he's posing as an inspector and as a doctor and etc., just to kind of poke and prod at this woman's vagina. And then in What a Mixed Up World, the follow-up, it's a farmer and a woman washing her hair in a stream, and similar antics ensue. And it's just completely ridiculous. But, you know, it was entertaining. Oh, really? Hey, Ryan, if there's anything specific that you want to point us to, I would love, please name drop away. And then the third story was good too. Stylistically was pretty great, and it felt like it was a teaser of a bigger story, A Hooker's Room. This woman who just decides that she wants to be a hooker, and her boyfriend or partner wants to have sex, and she charges him, and then he becomes her pimp, and they kind of talk about it when they go out for dinner and talk about their new kind of found world, and, you know, so you're going to be a hooker, right? Uh-huh. Then I want to be your pimp. Okay, that's a great idea. Ha ha ha, what a pair we are. And they just kind of laugh and kind of talk, you know, kind of act like, oh, it's so funny and it's such a joke, when, you know, obviously things are a lot more serious. So it feels like it's the beginning of a story that eventually may have turned dark if it was a continuing story. Let me just see. Yeah, no, they don't talk about this story in particular. Infatuated with the form and has self-published, quite uncommon in Japan. Many of his works. Oh, okay. So it's at Naoto Yamakawa is his name. And then at 15, he saw the work of the previous, or not the previous artist, some other manga artists, and then just decided to start doing things himself. So, like I said, this has been in my collection for I don't know how long, and I would have read it a long time ago, but I haven't. Again, with the things that end up in your bins, you don't revisit them a lot. So it was about time to revisit some of this stuff. So again, this is one that you should find in cheap bins if you're living somewhere where you're lucky enough to have access to that. And I realize that not everybody does. But keep your eyes peeled for that. So that was pretty much it. I don't know if you're still here. I'm just about to finally get to the Jazz Age Chronicles that you had kind of pointed out as something you were interested in. I'm finally there. They've been kind of standing by for me to read for a little while. So tonight is going to be probably digging into that blab, and then I'm hoping to read this. So apparently this is the second volume. This is the second volume of this series. So just kind of poking through the first couple of pages, they were talking about kind of giving you an overview of what happened the previous issues, and an introduction to the characters here. So I'm looking forward to this one. The art looks really nice, and I'm really in this mindset right now. I'm really in the zone of revisiting these indie artists and these indie books. So this one is from March 1990 from Caliber Press. So how many issues do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like I got 5 issues of it. So I don't remember if it ran 5 issues or not, but that's what I have at this point. And I'm hoping, again, keeping my eyes out with some of the local guys here. I didn't read. I also found the last few issues of that Night Streets that I talked about before, with the unfortunate cat character. So I'm going this weekend to pick up a few. Here we go. Let's post this here. Toshiharu Tsuge's The Man Without Talent and the Swamp, Tadao Tsuge, Slum Wolf and Trash Target and Tale of the Best, Shinichi Abe, that Miyoko Asagaya feeling, and then Kuniko Surita's The Sky is Blue with a Single Cloud. Cool. Thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate that. That's great. That's a great list. So more stuff to look at or look for, which is exactly what I want. So while I was going through my bins, I knew that I had it, but I didn't know where I had thrown it. Looks like this came from 2019 Free Comic Book Day. My favorite thing is Monsters Free Comic Book Day. And I haven't actually opened it. Yeah, so it's a story that's not in the book. Oh, well, shit. Isn't that exciting? Oh, or is it a mix? Oh, hey, yeah. Looks like it's starts off, the first part is a personal story, The Bite That Changed My Life, about how she became paralyzed. That's amazing. Mr. Gretzky, how are you, man? And then we get a centerfold that's from the full length. And then what's the second story here? D's. Yeah. It's not coming to me right off the bat, but again, really great. I'm glad that I found this. I want to dig into this. Yeah, because I mean, I don't recognize those pages there. So, while I hold out that a volume 2 will be coming, I've got something else to dig into. So I'm hoping to dig into this right away and read this bad boy. And it's great to see her stuff in a floppy format as well, too. It really, really works. Oh, look at this. How to Draw a Monster. Wow, that's great. I don't often participate with Free Comic Book Day, especially now that maybe I should go with Lily again now that she's kind of at that age. But it just got to be a point where it was such a hassle going into the shops on Free Comic Book Day, because you just had to fight through crowds of people just there to grab all the free comics they could, because every once in a while one of them becomes worth something. And there was just so much pressure. The comic shop owners, it just didn't seem like it was fun anymore. It was fun when I used to go with Jaden, because he would get really excited about it, and they would always let him pick a couple of extra ones, which was very nice. And then I guess finally we'll just do a quick run through. So this was this Wednesday's comic book haul from my pull list. I say pull list, but there's a chunk of this that I just got right off the shelf. Thankfully, they managed to get in We Live number 4 for me. So, and then number 5 is out. What I didn't realize is that number 5 is the end of the first arc. I have a lot to say about this book, but I'm not going to do it here because I'd love to talk about it with Damien, and he doesn't have his issue 5 yet. So I don't want to give away any spoilers. So we'll just leave it at that. I finished the first arc there, and I have thoughts. Norse Mythology, number 5. Again, as soon as I came home, I read We Live. As soon as I finished that, I dug into Norse Mythology. I still really like this issue. I was watching Damien's video, and he said he wasn't as hot on this issue. Not that he disliked it, but it just didn't work as much for him, and he thinks that maybe it was because of the art. I loved the art in this one, and I loved the coloring in this one. This first story I thought was great. Kind of shows the gods as just fucking cowards, to be honest. Really, really great. Really great little story. Continue to absolutely adore this book. This is definitely one that I'm going to double dip on. If they do a nice hardcover version or something, I will be there for it. And then the second story is Freya's Unusual Wedding, and we just get a few pages. The one thing that happens with this book for me is that the endings always seem to be really abrupt. It doesn't always seem like a natural place to end the actual chapter, and this was one of those times where it felt like maybe there was going to be one more page and then that was it. That said, though, that is such a minor complaint because I do love this book. I do really have fun with that one. And then in the continuing saga of things that for some reason they're not putting in my pull list, which I had to talk to them about and make sure that it got added. Yes, Craig Russell doing the layouts. Craig Russell doing the layouts. Those ones aren't worth a lot of money anymore. Let me just double check here. So story and words, Neil Gaiman. Script and layouts, P. Craig Russell. For Loki's Children, the art and colors are by David Rubin. For Freya's Unusual Wedding, the art and colors are by Jill Thompson. And then the variant cover by our man, Mr. David Mack, which seems to be everywhere these days. And I love his covers, which is unfortunate because it seems like a lot of other people love the covers too. And he's one of those guys where the covers might be the thing that makes them really hard to get as people buy them up. So for some reason, I know that at one point I added this to my pull list, but I realized that I'm missing a couple of issues, 5 and 6. It's Batman The Adventure Continues. I picked up 7 and 8. It turns out that issue 9 is going to be the last issue of this one, so I made sure to add it to my pull list so I could at least get that final issue. I'm really unsure about what happened, and I think one of the things that has happened with my comic shop is one of the guys there that I used to deal with all the time, he would just often just throw things in my bin that he knew that I would like or suspected that I would like. And I don't know if he ever officially put it on a list because there was a time where I had to get rid of my entire pull list. And when I started wanting to put stuff on, I was worried about, I didn't want them to order books and put books aside for me and then me not be able to pick them up because I didn't want to do that to the shop. And he just was really super nice about it. He said, honestly, Terrence, don't even worry about it. If you don't pick it up, it's really okay. I can put a couple of things aside for you. And if you can get them, you get them. And if it takes you a couple months, don't even sweat it. So I have a feeling that since he's left, there might have been stuff that have not kind of made it to the list going forward, that it was just kind of his mental list. So, which is fine, but it has been a little bit of a stumbling block of, I swear I fucking put that on my list and now I'm missing a couple issues. And again, because it's these kind of stuff that's more mainstream, I don't want to get locked down. Like this is a variant cover, for example, because this is the only one that they had. Thankfully, it was cover price. But I mean, part of it with me for some of this is it's such a fucking hassle that if you miss it and it sells out because some bullshit happens and I'm stuck with only these variant covers in town that are going to cost me like $14. Like it's just a pain in my ass. And then I don't want to spend the money and I don't want to support the shop. So thankfully, they still had some cover price ones left, so I didn't get locked into that. The next issue of Marvel, haven't read it yet, haven't really looked through it yet. I think since the last issue, this one has kind of dropped down in my ranking a little bit. Not that I do ranking, but I think it's dropped down a little bit, that I just wasn't as blown away by the previous issue. So I'm hoping it kind of picks up again. Again, I'm here for the art for this book, not necessarily the stories. And another one they had, I put 2 and 3 aside because I couldn't afford, this was the only other book that I could afford this week. I think I spent $40 this week on comics, $41, something like that, which is, that's kind of my upper end for a new comic book day these days. But I was liking the other Cimmerian, the Red Nails. I'm going to give the Frost Giant's daughter a shot, even though, again, this is one that Damien said it kind of, the first issue was strong, but it really fell off for him the last couple of issues. I want to give it a shot. I've signed up for the next mini-series that's coming out. I think all of them are going to be 3 or 4 issues. I think Paulo Costa was saying the same thing in a previous stream. The art in this one looks fantastic, so I'm excited. And again, we get some more of my beautiful snow comics. Now, that might have been something I said in the video that I deleted. I've started to earmark comics that have like kind of snowy themes to them because I thought it might be fun at some point this winter to look at a bunch of comics with snow themes and see how different artists handle just putting white on the page or what they don't put on the page. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one. I liked Red Nails. I thought it was great. I don't have experience with Conan books. I've never really had any interest in it. And again, it's the art that draws me to this stuff. So this is beautiful. I spend $2.99 for the only book I get from Archie. Hey, oh yeah, nice. And then Ryan figures they finally come out with a decent Batman title and it gets canceled. Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that it got canceled. I'm assuming that was the case. Maybe it was only supposed to be a 9-issue story. I don't know. That seems like an unusual number to throw onto a mini series or a maxi series. So I mean, you know, I go to the comic shop almost on a weekly basis, and it's nice to kind of get into some newer titles and have a read of some of the newer stuff. Like I said, every time I go, I end up looking at that independent shelf. And the one thing that I didn't think about was, I guess, Ha Ha issue number 1 had a second print that I missed out on. And then issue 2 came out. I don't remember seeing it, but honestly, I didn't look for it. And I think it's kind of fine, you know, because it feels like kind of spending too much brain processing power on that kind of shit is just not a place that I want to be at. So who knows, maybe I'll never read Ha Ha just because of all of that stuff. And the other stuff I talked about in the stream with Rasa. So yeah, and I don't want to talk about too much about this one, but I did enjoy this, and I do recommend, if you can find it, check out this Raw Deal. And again, just a huge shout out to the artist formerly known as the Mentalist Dave for gifting this sucker to me. A little act of kindness there. Hell of a nice guy. Hoping to get on a stream with him at some point as well. We've been kind of talking through email. So appreciate it. Huge thanks for that. A hell of a read. Can honestly say it's unlike anything that I've read before. And as I talk about a lot on this channel, the idea of creators coming from outside of comics and not really having a history with comics to really give it their own unique twist is always going to be appealing to me. So yeah, cool. Hey fellas, thanks very much for hanging out. Ryan, thanks very much for those recommendations there. Really appreciate it. G, good to see you as always. Mr. Gretzky, thanks for hanging out. And I think that was it. Right on, guys. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you.